Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Triangle Button podcast. Once again, I have my wonderful guest, Caleb. How are you doing today, man?
Good to be back.
Good to
Yeah,
be back.
talk about all the new stuff.
All the new stuff. Well, yeah, that's very true. I actually want to start off with an announcement. So, obviously, we're going to be talking about The Last of Us HBO like episodes and everything. So, I want to give a clear that we will be doing spoilers of both the game as well as the show. We'll try our best to not like go like too far. It will stick to the parameters of what happens in episode 3. And on other news, this is actually kind of a sad one. And so apparently Annie Wershing, so like she plays Tess in the game as a voice actor. She passed away just recently. She died 45 and apparently was from cancer. So I just want to say, rest in peace. To give like our condolences for
Mm.
her, like the loss. And that's just I don't know. I was really surprised, especially like because the new show just came out. Like she died very young, and she was a brilliant voice actress and actress in general. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And so now, like that, we've like got all the announcements out of the way. Let's start with the podcast. So first off, I want to talk about last week's episode just a little bit. So we made some predictions at the end of it, saying how we believe that the Bill and Frank session was going to last, 2 episodes, and very much we were wrong. However, we also mentioned the theory about like the flower, which was confirmed. So let's just talk a little bit about the predictions we made, like in more depth and like what this episode did. If you want to start off.
Sure. I was relieved that at the end of the episode, they were where I needed them to be.
Mm.
And by that I mean that it's like okay, I was really worried that they would balloon this too much. I don't want to be watching The Last of Us episode 6, and then it's like, Bill and Frank following them to Pittsburgh. It's like no. Like let's keep these things separate. And I'm glad it's like okay. It only took so that's why not to diminish it, but just I was worried that they were going to get behind schedule. I'm very picky about making sure they don't cut anything out of the game. There's room for everything. That being said, it really defied my expectations, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
The idea, every time they did a time jump in this episode, I'm like, okay, now it's 2023. Shows up and starts killing a bunch of clickers. And
Yeah.
then it'd be like, oh, no, this isn't the present yet. This is just him meeting Frank. Okay, but
Mm.
there'll be a time jump, and then it says 3 years later, and he's fighting with Frank, and I'm like, I know what this is, and then it's like, oh no, nothing happened here. And they cut 3 years later, and I'm like, I'm seeing the destroyed cars, and I'm like, we know. Oh wait, no, it's not. It's just a peaceful anthology, going through these two men's wonderful lives in the post-apocalypse, and
Mm.
it is a with implied spoilers. It is an implied microcosm of what The Last of Us really is,
Mm.
which is on the outside and on the outset, this grim, dark, miserable post apocalypse. But in that, we somehow find that plants have started to cover our cities and that there's a ray of hope, and that Joel is able to find his little ray of hope in this dark, disastrous world. And it really felt like that's what this was. That they died happier than they ever were in their normal lives before this whole post-apocalypse. And I think that it really speaks to sort of the Last of Us is an optimistic series. Uh, there's such a disguise of grimness and darkness and pessimism, but that just makes the hope behind it all the more powerful that they have episodes like this. And that would
Mm.
be why I would give this episode like an A grade, because honestly, I think that it was a strong story. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. It was a very strong story indeed. I was so blown away at how much it defied like my expectations because we started the episode with Joel at the river and he's like putting up like the little rocks and that's almost like his little moment of remembering Tess. It's like this little like it's so like short too, just like how he's just kneeling and you could tell he doesn't want to acknowledge it, but he still like wants to give her like some form of grave. And I really like that. I also loved how they confirmed our prediction with the flower, like and how the like
Mhm.
fungi got into the flower and like spread across the earth and everything. That was really well done. And I love how Joel like says it too. It's just like, it just affected everything. It went from flour, it was in the sugar, it was in every single like food product, and we all just ate it at once. And it really demonstrates like how quick this pandemic just took over everything. How there was no like planning or response. It was just there. So I liked how they like added on from like previous two episodes, just detailing how quick it was. And I also really like how they like demonstrate Ellie and how like when they're going to walk the 5 miles or so, like she's just cracking her jokes as she does in the game, and I just really appreciated like just like those little interactions. But to go on to essentially the whole Bill and Frank section, the way that they shot like the cinematography, the music, and how they portrayed Bill. He was slightly different, but still had that original anti-government vibe. I love what he's like. What was the phrase that he said? It's like this, like yes, thank you. That just perfectly encapsulated his character, and I loved how. And I checked out the Last of Us podcast, and they're like the directors going over, and apparently that wasn't even meant to be said. It was really
I
supposed to
saw
be like a thought.
he pushed for that line.
Don't you think we should include this line? Yeah, it.
Yeah.
I just love that so much, and he did the character so much justice and added on so much. In the game, it felt more like he was there, and they give little hints, and I do appreciate those little hints about his partner and how it's a little bit of a mystery. But it was just done a little bit better, and I wanted to touch on that too. Was do you think that they should have included more game elements into the show? Because I know that one of the significant parts, like when you go into Lincoln, is setting off the traps, the interactions with Ellie, as well as the slow bonding experience you have with Bill, and that reveal in the end, and like or like you remember like when you like hang upside down to like that whole action set piece and how like Bill saves you at the final moment. Like they really changed how this episode was you know done. And the game, it was like a slow thing where you got to build up that friendship, and it had a lot of like significant story beats as well. And I still think they demonstrated that perfectly within the show. Like the same messages still come across, and I'll touch on that in a bit. But I was curious of your opinion on
The answer that one of the things I said right afterwards is that I'm glad they subbed out the game section for what they gave us.
that. Hmm.
Two reasons for that. The first one is that gameplay is gameplay, and it's only really fun. I don't want to say it's only really fun. Um, I'm talking to a gaming streamer. I got to be careful what I say. Um, I was gonna say it's more enjoyable when you're playing the game yourself and you have the interactivity.
Hmm.
But I think you lose a lot of what makes a game special when you're watching it. Not all of it, but you lose a lot of what makes a game special just watching gameplay.
Hmm.
And that makes sense that no, this is a TV show, and in a TV show, we don't want to see a third person over the shoulder Joel running through Lincoln, setting off landmines, and shotgunning clickers in an elementary school. We want to see. I mean, I kind of want to see that, but maybe we'll say there's something better that we could show if we're doing a TV show, and that's more depth into the story. Something that actually gives background to these characters, because when people say they adore The Last of Us, they're usually talking about The Last of Us as this amazing story. And when we were excited to see a show come out, that wasn't because we were thinking like, oh my gosh, like we can see better action. We were probably thinking that, oh, like one of one of our most heartfelt stories is being made into a show, and we get to flesh out and see more of that signature character driven subtlety that I think these games have. So I think yeah, including it. It was a good use of time, and it was also something new, which I am glad that. That's the thing about this show. It's not taking things out that we love, but it's maybe taking a little bit of stuff out that we don't need and then putting in stuff that we really like and adds a lot of flesh and character to the story. So I think the change was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I do think it was, well, yes, necessary because there's an entire different medium you have to apply to. From the game, like you were mentioning, there is that interactive piece, and you don't get the same things because you're not fighting along. Like in the game, you fight alongside Bill, and you build up, and those different conversations that you have, like develop the story. Whereas in like the film, we can't do that. We can't spend the entire time to try and like illustrate their past is very important. And the way they show it, I think they did a terrific job. I think that there was a really interesting change they did with the dynamic of Bill in the show as Bill in the game. And that comes when you're first talking to Bill in the game, he's very pessimistic about everything, as we already know. But what I noticed was that when he talks about Tess, he does speak of admiration at first. But then when Joel's like, "Well, I have to like take this girl," and he's like, "And Tess let you do that? Man, she must be dumber than I thought." And he kind of insults her multiple times, and it kind of eats at Joel a little bit. And as you keep going, like he just mentions like multiple times, like everything he does is like a survivor. He's very grim. He's pissed off at everything in this world.
Mhm.
He's a survivalist, and I did get that the show did that too. However, in the game, I got the sense of what Joel could have been if there was no Tess or Ellie. And that's almost used as a way that this is what Joel could be if he doesn't start trying to have companions, trying to build love, and try to like have hope. It's almost like the absence of hope that Bill represents. Does that make sense?
That does actually. Yeah, for the game, um, we are in non-spoiler mode right
Yeah.
now. There's so
No,
many.
it's okay. It's okay. We just can't go like past, but you could say like there's events that will happen later from the game side. Like you don't have to tell what it is, but you can imply it. Don't worry. You can go.
Can I say a Bill quote?
Yes.
Caring about people in this world is good for one thing.
Get you killed.
That's
Yeah,
what
you know what? You know what? That is like an interesting quote that you did choose. That's for sure.
I quote.
Yeah,
Um,
that's okay. For our viewers, don't worry. Just don't look too far into that quote. It was just like that's his pessimistic view as a survivor. And that's
yes.
very much what Joel implies like many times too. Even like in the one episode with Tess where she's like, we did shitty things, though we are survivors.
Mhm.
Like he like acknowledging. But you know like what I'm getting at is that he embodies so many elements of Bill. And it's scary. And I think the game does a really cool job at mirroring those parallels. However, what I love in the show is that they almost reduce that, like, his survivorship, yes, is at the forefront, but it's almost like a shielding of his insecurities.
Mm,
And when in that, they talk about like, obviously like you already know that like he is like a in the show. I mean, I hope you guys watch the episode. But it's like dealing with that like sexuality and how like he's just very like shielded from everything, just like Joel is. He doesn't have feelings until he becomes vulnerable to Frank. And when they first meet in the hole and like their interaction, I thought that was like a wonderful interaction because in the game we don't get to see Frank at all. We only get to see like his suicide at like game.
yes.
Spoiler alert. And I just love that interpretation, like how they almost made him like he's rude to people because he puts that as a front, as a survivor. However, in the game, he was a pessimist. He nothing's good in the world. It's always going to be I can only survive. And I told Frank that, and he thought he could go. And that's another thing too, was that Frank in the game hated Bill. Like obviously there was implications that they did have feelings, but it was very, even this final suicide note was, and I forever hate your guts. And it was kind of played off as a cheeky, friend, but it obviously meant a lot more. And I liked how they fleshed out their character developments in this. It was very much, I don't know. It was just amazing how they did it.
Yeah, and that is kind of and Troy Baker sort of threw something out there where he said you have this very stalwart, sort of individualistic, right wing, backcountry, like I have a bunker full of guns and beer. Like you know what I mean?
And
I'm
wine. It's wine. It's beer. It's not even beer. It's
like,
wine, guns, and the American flag.
yeah, and the American flag, like this really tough, individualistic. And then he's sort of deep inside him, he has this side to him that's or his sexuality is that he's gay. And if I read a bit into that, as much as I wish we didn't live in this world, we live in kind of a world where that sort of gun-toting, like libertarian culture does actually have like a decent amount of like homophobia to it, right? That's
Hmm.
sort of like I'll just say someone like that in our world would not would not have an easy time being gay, right? Like
Yeah.
that kind of culture doesn't jive well with it. So I think I think it's sort of implied that he never came out of the closet in the real
Hmm.
world. That he was this socially isolated, very introverted, sort of tough guy, possibly repressed. Not to say that he wasn't a real tough guy. I think he was really tough, but there's something more to it that he was sort of this repressed gay guy, and Frank comes along as kind of like Frank's kind of a bumbling idiot in this apocalyptic world.
Hmm.
Like this guy, when I saw Frank, it's like this guy's never touched a gun in his life, right? Like this guy couldn't hurt a fly. He's like trying to like sort of stumble his way through this conversation with this guy with a rifle, and the best thing that he seems to know how to do is just kind of like charm Bill into like letting him into his house and sort of like like chatting him up, and then well, he seduces Bill, and we see this inversion where all of a sudden you just see Bill almost has this really like I don't mean in a pejorative way, but almost like a feminine side, right? Like
Hmm.
he's sort of he's singing this really really intimate like romance song about how he can't express his love, and then you see him in the scene after the shower right before they sleep together, and he's sort of an awkward you know what I mean, like he's a very insecure, you can see in his facial expressions that he's not really um yeah, like he's not really comfortable with intimacy, and I found that was really I don't know. I think that was a really good story, and I think it.
Hmm.
I love the scene when like, and I love this because like I've dealt with this from people more. I'll just say effeminate than I. Of just Frank stomping out in the front yard, stomping out in the street, saying this place is a mess, and just like can't deal with it. And Bill sort of with that grounded pragmatist, like survivalist mentality of like a camper. He's like, "What are you talking about?" I don't know. I really likes that scene.
Yeah,
Um,
he's very much like that gruff guy. Also, I found it was interesting. So when you said like he's very like repressed in like this new world because he never like came out. I think there's almost like an indicate like this. Obviously, like you could tell just based on like how he talks to Frank, but when even when they're like going to like like have sex, like he's just like oh, it's your first. He's like, I mean, I done it with a girl one kind of once, like you know what I mean. It's like that kind of like awkward like little like take on, but I wouldn't really like describe him as too repressed in this world. He's actually very liberated in this world. Now he's like closed off with his sexuality, but in terms of his enjoyment in this world,
yeah,
he goes out and he's like, I could do this every day. And then 4 years pans out and he's still
yeah,
doing the same acts every single time. And yeah, I like how I do agree. Frank is very much this kind of bubbling idiot when he kind of comes around, like just strolling through the forest without a gun, without anything.
mhm,
And he does understand Bill so well. Even when he's like talking to him, I love also how he's like, I thought about lying, but I thought that wasn't right. Just how he says that, but he very much understands Bill almost perfectly when he like meets him too.
Mhm.
You know, and that demonstrates because when he goes into the house, he's just like, "Oh, can I just get something to eat, or can I actually just get a shower? Can I just play the piano?" And does a horrible rendition of that song, by the way, just struggling like da 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 da. Like just please don't butcher my song. Like, and when he just sings that song, "Loaning for a Partner," it was just that little thing where it's so who's the girl? It was a guy. I know. And I know I don't seem much the type. No, you do. I just love how Frank just reads them perfectly. And just seeing their relationship and the slow build of it is it's really moving and touching. When they have like their like first like intimate like experience, I thought they mastered like the warmth and vulnerability that often goes into like those like first times of being intimate with someone. And the way that they shot it, like the lights of like the hand, like on the back, like the visuals were just stunning. I think they're actually going to get an Emmy for this episode. Like just
I think they're getting an Emmy for this episode.
well, they're going to do the whole show, but specifically like that show, like that episode, I think sealed it. The acting was phenomenal.
Yes,
Do you not agree?
I would say like um, there's no good way to phrase this.
Mm-hmm.
I've never slept with a guy, and I said there's no good way to phrase this, and I don't, which makes me actually give a lot of credit to Nick Offerman for how well he acted in that relationship as a straight man playing a gay man in that intimate moment. Um,
Mm.
and I really do think like like I'm gonna be like I feel like I used to sort of roll my eyes when I heard people say like, "Oh, like a straight man can't play a gay man in the movie or vice versa," and I sort of said, "Yeah, no, they can." But I said in this moment, I really thought, "No, this is like it had a it obviously didn't have a real chemistry. Like I don't think the actors were actually like attracted to each other,
No,
but
no, 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 no.
it
It's
had
like,
a lifelike chemistry of
mm,
this sort of, you know what I mean, like that, just that intimacy of, yeah, like that when Frank goes on top of him and he says like I'm not a whore, like just I don't know that really like I'm a playful. You're right. It has like that playful intimacy that you only really see
playful
in
banter.
that playful
Yeah.
banter that you only really see when you're in um like a romantic relationship with someone. Like you don't really have anywhere else. So no, I think that's yeah, no, I think that's I basically the spark notes is I give credit to Nick Offerman for
Mm,
how well and I'm saying this like I feel like, it'd be more credible if a gay guy said this, but like how well it feels like he captured that intimate moment.
mm.
Um and I also just give credit to the whole scene, and I'm gapping on the other actor's name. Um
I'm not really too like sure of the actor's name. Like it's okay. We'll go on now. Like we'll like in the next podcast we can give
we'll give credit.
yeah.
And I want to give a lot of credit to him for how well he really made this. Yeah, like this, he got the intimacy right. Um, Honestly, with the way it was going, I had my hand on the skip button because I don't like watching sex scenes in movies, so I was like, um, but yeah, no, they didn't actually show anything. So,
Like
um,
I really just loved how they filmed everything. I think they really captured the word of vulnerability, as I was saying. I think the reason why it works with Nick Offerman doing it, and like I hope there's not actually like a lot of like criticism of a straight guy playing like a role. I think the reason why it works so well too is because like Bill in the show, he starts off coming off like he's trying to portray this tough, like manly, like straight guy. That's almost how he comes off. And when he like interacts with Frank, he's very nervous. He doesn't know what to do because he hasn't done that before. And I think Nick Offerman, like obviously like pretty straight guy, it's like you can get that, you know, that vulnerable side. Does that make sense? Like I don't know, it might sound a little
it,
weird or
I would
sound
say
bad.
it makes sense, but we should make the caveat, because it is an important caveat to make. I don't think it's necessarily good to equate like being gay with like being more feminine, or like you're gay, like, you know what, I don't know quite how to say it, but the idea of like, oh, like he's gay, like that's more
You don't want it like a stereotypical version of what they're trying to portray on screen.
I am yeah, yeah, that's why I feel like part of me likes it because in this case, like, it feels like Frank does bring out Nick Offerman Bill's more effeminate side.
Mm.
Um, but the other part of me really also respects it, that um, I don't know, it felt something felt kind of fun about the idea that like him being gay doesn't make him any less of a man. I guess like he's still, this like Chad badass survivalist, built a fucking wall of flamethrowers, like
Hmm.
sniping zombies while eating steak at his dinner table and saying this never gets old. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I,
like
I,
he is the absolute man, and he's gay, and him being gay doesn't take away. And I think maybe that's even what he thought. Because he thought, I don't know if he thought this, but being gay makes you less of a man. But it kind of shows like, no, it doesn't. Like, he's just, you know what I mean? That kind of I'm glad there's
mhm.
that kind of yeah, I don't know, that kind of artistic expression of that, I guess.
Yeah, I really appreciated how they did that. I like how it wasn't like a very stereotypical version of like someone
Frank
being gay.
was. Frank was the boutique. Like Frank had his kind of gay.
He was a little like more like feminine. That's fine. I liked how there was a dichotomy between the two, and
Hmm.
how they like really it worked really well like to see them, and how just like you were saying, either of them being gay, it doesn't take away like of being a man. And I liked how they demonstrated that. They just demonstrated like the pure love between two people. How
Yes.
they focused on that was just amazing. I also like tied into that vulnerability aspect. I like when Joel and Tess, when they come and meet Frank and Bill, like Bill does not like Frank whatsoever. He just has his gun like aimed on the table.
You mean Bill doesn't like Joel?
Bill doesn't like Joel.
Oh,
That's it.
you said Frank for sure. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I meant Joel. Sorry. Yeah, when, like how he has his gun on the table, like pointed at Joel the entire time. I really like that, and I also once Tess and Frank leave, it's when they have like that conversation, and Joel knows Bill's vulnerability. It says, "Well, that barbed wire, that's got to be done in a year. However, if you trade with us, we can give you some more wire that will last you your entire life." That ties into this element that Bill
You
says at the
forgot,
beginning. Hmm?
you forgot a very important line there. He says it'll
And
last
other lives.
and other lives. Yeah.
Yes, yes, you're right. Like you're not only affecting you, but other lives. I know. Like I really like that, and it ties into what Bill says at the end of the episode. He's like, you know, it wasn't until you came, like I never felt afraid, but then like everything changed. And I like how when you meet somebody that you love, it brings that sense of you're going to be fearful because you always want to protect them. You
Yeah.
always want to do everything you can to avoid any danger. And that's demonstrated when he goes out, he's trying to eliminate the guys, and he's like shooting in the middle of a rainstorm at the
Yes.
guys at like while they're getting lit on fire. And even when he gets shot, he's just like, no, we have the codes. Just take the codes, call Joel, we're in trouble. And I like how he doesn't even think about himself. He's just purely thinking of Frank. And that is just an amazing.
It is. Like, I think we just were in agreement that this was an amazing relationship. Um, Frank and Bill, like, this was something that, um, it's the kind of stuff that we watch the show for. Um, yeah, we should yeah, no, I think I think we're in agreement that we have to applaud it for that aspect.
Yeah.
And I did kind of tell, like, I even told like my roommate that I was watching this episode with after the episode. I said, we were talking about it, and I told him that this kind of was The Last of Us, even though it wasn't, even though none of this
Hmm.
came. And the reason I said that is because I said like it's. He pointed out, and a lot of people said this to me. It's like I like that the zombie apocalypse focuses on the humans and how it affects the humans, and I really liked. I'm like, yeah, no, that's I agree. That's what I like too, and just discussing it, I sort of said, if you watch this show and you don't like the scenes of Joel and Ellie walking down the road, talking to each other, then The Last of Us isn't for you, because that's what this is. It's those little
Hmm.
scenes of just people talking. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no. So no, that's just really yeah.
You
What?
you know, like what perfectly encapsulates that idea, that core thing. It's like those little conversations and interactions that make The Last of Us. Because truly, The Last of Us is that last of hope, that last of love, that last of any form of companionship
Mhm.
that gives humans the ability to band together. That's what made humans survive for so long. It's that like willingness, because without caring, there's no point of living. And I love how the show just delves into the enjoy the little things, such
Yeah.
as that scene where they're out in the like garden, and he's like, I traded one of your guns for some seeds. What gun? Like, and they're like having a strawberry, and it's just that like appreciation for like having strawberries and enjoying it, and just the smile that comes over their faces. It encapsulates what that show is about, and
Yes.
it was just, and then I'm not gonna go too far into it because I don't want to keep going on and on and on. I'm just gonna say, what's that fucking music kicked in the on the nature of daylight? That damn song every time,
Yeah.
because it's that song just like, oh, every time I think of it, I think of the movie Arrival because they use that song as well. And in both cases, it's always like representing like not wanting to admit something is ending,
Yes.
and how that, on their final day they did every single thing that they wanted to, getting married, dressing up, having a beautiful dinner, and then chugging back some wine, and eventually cuddling and like falling asleep and never getting.
Hmm.
And that moved me personally. I already told you, like that actually made me cry, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And it moved me very very much how they did it. It was very tasteful and very encapsulate like love and what it means.
Yeah. It was. It was a really strong. It was just a really strong scene. I really do applaud. Um, yeah, like it seemed to transcend any boundaries of just really any kind of love. And I'm not just talking about like the impressiveness of that. Um, it really just feels like a universal. I don't know, just like a story of love. Like you can apply it even to you can apply that kind of you can relate to that not just on the level of like a straight relationship, but I'm talking about like
Mhm.
sibling relationships. And you're gonna say, "Wait, Caleb, that's creepy," but I'm being serious in the sense of just that, or like a I don't know, like friend relationship or family, whatever it is that just mutual care between two people and those little moments of fun they have together, and the idea that when one of them decides it's time to go, the other one is like, I'm right there with you, pal. You know what I mean? That like that I don't know, it had a really strong message to it. And I yeah, no, I just have to applaud, honestly. Just there aren't there are so many stories that are about things rather than relationships, and I'm glad things like I just said things, but like stories like this exist,
Mhm.
to really focus in and just write a love letter to love. I don't know. That seems cheesy, but that's my opinion on this episode.
Yeah, and I entirely again. I feel like I'm on a record player here, like on repeat. Just keep saying like I agree, but yeah, we just have this general like agreement of like everything in this show, like this entire episode is just remarkable in every shape and form. Um, I actually wanted to talk about another difference in the show, and I'm curious of what you think about it because like, in the game, what was so important about getting the vehicle, obviously like it was about like progressing the story of how they go from Lincoln to eventually Pittsburgh. um, and like that was really important to move the story. However, one part is that Joel places his trust in Ellie, and so does like Frank, which is kind of sorry, not Frank, sorry, Bill.
Wait,
Is in the
wait. No, he doesn't. He doesn't let her have a gun.
no, that's the thing. What he does is that because neither him and Bill can move the truck to, remember, they wind it up because they had to like let it roll.
Oh, okay.
and then was starting up the vehicle, and because and it was also in standard, right? So you had to like
Yeah.
pop the clutch. And what was interesting is, well, this is briefly after you find out about Frank's suicide, in which Joel shows his little bit of compassion, saying, I'm sorry. And it was his like that was like his little moment of reflection about, you know, this is what happens. Like this is like what could be the consequence if you trust somebody and have a companion and have love. Is that
Yeah.
you feel that loss is build. However, it's almost like the reason why that happened was because of that survivalness. And I
Well,
think,
we don't
oh,
know in the game what caused that, though, do we? Like, do we know
you
much about
mean,
what? Do we know what caused? We don't know how that survivalness caused this issue in the game, do we?
yeah. So what happens is that the reason why Frank leaves in the first place is because they're not living. And he's like, you know what, you're wrong about everything. I'm going to go out on my own. And then what
Okay.
happens is that when he tries to escape to get the truck, that's why he steals the car battery from the school.
Okay.
Is that he's like, you know, I got bit multiple times. However, I had to leave, and I still don't regret what I did.
Okay.
And that's what happens. So I think that that little part of reflection, it's a foretelling of what could happen if Joel was just to be the survivor, just be in hardship, and how that could split off his companions, as well as the consequence of having that love. Is that, yeah, that could come to an end, but it's better to have it than not at all, as shown by Bill's feelings.
Mhm.
Now, to get into like the whole trust, is that Joel like puts a lot of trust into Ellie to pop the clutch in order to get the vehicle going. And there's zombies around too, so they're trying to get this started. It's making a lot of noise, and there's a lot. It's a huge, intense scene because Joel is finally putting his like just letting go of the wheel, unintended,
Yeah.
and letting Ellie take control. And I think that that's a really interesting part. And I'm curious of what you think. Like, do you think that they're going like they should have had that somewhere in the show because instead she just takes the gun in secret. And I think that's still going to go into that trusting mentality, but I don't know. I was curious of what you thought on that.
Well, in the game, um, Joel is in like I forget exactly how it works in the game, but I do remember that Joel tells Ellie she can't have a gun, and then Ellie uses a gun to save his life,
Hmm.
which changes things in a way that Joel decides, okay, it was me or him. I'm going to give you this, like this rifle now, and you're going to shoot guys from a rooftop so I can get through.
Hmm.
And that's sort of his moment of trust, where he says like it was me or him. And yeah, no, I don't know. I think they're still gonna have that basic dynamic because in the game it's kind of the same, right? Like Ellie gets a gun because she picks it up off the ground and then shoots a guy in the head who's trying to strangle Joel.
Hmm.
And in the show it's gonna be that Ellie snuck a gun away. I will say I am a little nervous about Ellie's arc in this show.
Oh.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I liked that Ellie was like a little shit in the game. Like she was kind of like this. Um, and Joel had to deal with her at first. I do think the show is leaning more in the direction of um, like maybe like Ellie can kind of take care of herself. I'm worried they might take it in that direction or something like the direction of like I don't know, Ellie's like killing zombies and stuff. Like I don't know, like something about this that um I think there is a core element to the game in the fact that she's not helpless, but she does need help,
Hmm.
and she's she's like kind of like lost her innocence, but only to the degree that like a 14-year-old has lost their innocence, where
Hmm.
they swear a lot and they're kind of shitty, but when you see a 14-year-old, it's still a kid. Like you're
Yeah.
no one mistakes them for an adult. I'm worried the game will have it of like, oh no, like she's like she can really take care of herself. Like I don't know, I don't know what you think about that. It's not a problem yet. I'm just worried it might be a problem.
So
Um,
so so just like to kind of sum up your concern, I might butcher it a little. Is that you're concerned of her character arc because of like her ability to be able to protect herself, and how she's still a kid. Like obviously the game they keep saying that like how she's she's trying to survive, but at the end of the day is still a kid. Like she's I'm trying to think of a really good way like of how to phrase it, like how you put it.
I'll put it this way:
Mhm.
the game, it is very much the story of a, I'll say, a cynical, practical old man traveling with an optimistic and, um I'll say, like, unprotected, or I don't know what to call it, like, like, I'll just say, like, young, with an optimistic young girl, right? That's kind of what it is. And I think that being the core of their kind of simple attributes. I don't want them to mess with the facts that Ellie's young too much. Like, I don't want it to be like I when I say young, what I mean is, like, I don't want them to lean too much into her being um too competent, I guess. Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, I do like the facts that in the game, like, it's very much like Joel learns to be a caretaker. I will be a little bit disappointed if they go into the story of, like, Joel tries to take care of her, but she doesn't need taking care of. It's like, no, no, like, she, um, yeah, I don't know, like, uh,
Well,
yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say.
I don't think that they're gonna like, ruin the competency. I don't think she's like, oh no, I don't need Joel's help. I think that in the like they've done a really good demonstration of like her progression and character arc so far. In that, for example, like we can go back to the other episodes when she first hears the clickers and she's like inquiring about different things and how the clicker still bites her and she's like just on the like able to survive. And I think that she knows that in both cases too. Even in the game, all she was trying to make a point of was you need to trust me and I am a kid, but I know how to survive. And I
Mm.
think both of them demonstrated that perfectly. For example, in the game, like there was, I guess a kind of little bit of a spoiler. Like there's a point where like she gets a rifle, and that's a very significant point that he like allows her that trust. And she does know how to survive. She even helps you in the game. She'll throw like bottles. She'll take her pocket knife and stab. And it shows that she does that as well in this universe, taking her pocket knife, slashing different people, as well as just even sometimes putting herself in the way to get bit from that clicker.
Mhm.
She's like even says, better me than you guys, I guess. She's
Yeah.
still very much a kid. And Joel understands that. And I love how in the episode, when they're traversing down the road, and he's like, actually, why don't we go around right here? And she's like, what, you afraid that I can't see in it? Or I got to be scarred for life? And then he's like, well, okay. He was trying to protect her. It still shows that parental role like you were talking about. And seeing the QZ massacre of civilians, you know, she is taken aback and like surprised, like, and how there were innocent people just killed just because they didn't have enough room.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that Joel tried to have that little bit of like good in him. Like as much as he tries to push down all of his feelings, he still cares very much. And he tries to protect her in every single way. And I think the show's doing a brilliant job of that character arc. And I don't think that they ruin it personally. I don't think they are going to ruin it. I think what they have, that's three great, wonderful episodes they've gotten so far.
These aren't problems with the episodes themselves.
Hmm.
It's something that I have a fear, like, kind of like my fear that was like that little 10% of, are they going to stretch out the Bill stuff too long? Because I want to get to other stuff.
Mhm.
Um, it's what, because I haven't had any of my fears justified yet. Every time I worry, um, every time I give that, like, the Rock raised eyebrow, if you know what I mean, like that that, sort of the, where I'm worried about it. I've been pretty much like assuaged. Like, I've been like, so okay, Caleb, you're paranoid. This is okay. So I don't think it is an issue yet, but it was one fear. That being said, I do want to ask him predictions.
Oh, we will
Predictions.
get to predictions in just a few more minutes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, no worries, no worries. We still have a couple
We're
more.
gonna get there.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. I actually wanted to say I like how Joel is still cold and tries to block off everything, and that is beautifully visualized in the end of the episode. when Ellie finds the suicide note of Bill and Frank and is like slowly reading, and when she gets through most of it, he's like, "So they're dead," and tries to almost like nonchalant it because that's the best way he could deal with the situation. Same with Tess, doesn't want to acknowledge it, and then it's as soon as like it's like she like shows him the letter where it says, "I'm leaving you everything so you can protect Tess because we're obviously protected." And I love how he takes a moment and that breaks him, where he actually has to go outside and calm himself down and to try and like build up that wall again. And I love how they show that. It's just a that is Joel to the core, and that shows how he deals with grief and how he deals with all of the traumas and all of the pain. It's just like that separation, almost like that was too much. Just like here, like how he could have had. It's almost like a reminder of those like he couldn't save. And it goes back to the last episode where Tess says, "Save who you can save," and that's almost what Bill implies too. Like save who you can save, but also who you love. And it's almost adding on to that theme. And I think that's super important because it's just adding on to this. You need to protect Ellie, and you can't save everybody. And I think that's really heartbreaking, but it's true to what the show is.
Yeah, I will say there's some interesting things to be said about how someone actually pointed this out to me. It was a YouTuber that like in the game he was even more closed off in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I saw footage from the early game and I'm like, oh yeah, damn, Joel really had a character arc there. Um, like that guy was, um, like yeah, like early on, like showing me clips from like the first like hour or two of the game. In the game, for example, they don't give him a reaction to Tess's death. Like Tess dies and he's out of there, and then he's like, we don't talk about that. Just
Mm-hmm.
Bill mentions Tess and Joel is silent. Like, and
he
even in
he
the
breaks down. He even like goes like this, and he's like, "They're right here," and then like just goes outside. And that was his moment of grieving.
yeah, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, there was that little I forgot about that. Um, there's also even in the game, one thing that I like is that, um, and I like this mechanic. In the game, they never really tell you that Joel and Tess are a couple, and at first, you actually can't really tell. You just sort of come to know it. Or
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, like in the game, they're working together. I was thinking, oh, they're like two like mobsters just kind of helping each other out. And then Tess makes a joke of like, oh, this is like a date. And he says, I am the romantic type. And when I heard that line in the game, I remember thinking, like, I just played it off as a joke because he was so cold, even though like he was just so mechanical and just getting
Mm-hmm.
ladders, putting them up, and then telling her to go up. I thought, oh yeah, no, this is just like some guy and his like partner in crime. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really until later as, oh, like, that's how you hang out with your girlfriend, bro. Like, you know what I mean? That kind of like, yeah. And
Well, yes.
but, I mean, it is. I'm not denying. Like in the game, they are a couple. I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm more showing that some. It's kind of like for you Better Call Saul fans out there. Um, in that show, they never tell you that Saul and his brother Chuck are actually brothers. You just sort of have to know it. Like the first couple,
Yeah.
you have to figure out that they're brothers because other that's the only kind of way you'd have this relationship. But no. I thought, yeah, it was really, yeah, no, I just think they're on a good, like most of my reviews of the show, they're on the right track.
Yeah. And okay, a few more things. I don't know why, because when I was watching it, just like seeing like it's gonna sound stupid. So when Frank is in that hole, I just kind of laughed so hard when I saw Bill like carry the ladder the way he did, and then like put it down. All I could think of is like them damn ladders, man. Because like in the
Yeah.
game, that's all you have to. You keep moving these damn stupid ladders, and it looks like the same. But anyways, going back to the end when I don't know. It's just when Joel says to Ellie, "Listen here, we got a few rules. Don't ever talk about this." And it's just I don't know. Like it's having like that solidify. Like we got that part from the game. It's like yes, okay. It's just showing how he needs to close himself back off again. And then we get after they like they both like shower, like get ready to go. They have the iconic clothes from the game,
Yep.
and all I could think about watching that is I'm like, oh my god, he has the shirt. Caleb's gonna be fucking happy because it's because I remember you were complaining. You're like, dude, I have that shirt. I got it from Marks. Why can't they get it for the show? And then when they
I
see them like that, too,
played that game and it made me look at like my graphic isn't just graphic design, like printed design t-shirts.
yeah.
And I decided like it's time to go to Mark's Work Warehouse and get some actual like grown up clothes. Um, and I went and I got like the blue button up from the game and the green button up from the game. Um, and I took them home and it was like, yeah, I finally okay, I have some clothes that I can respect myself in. Um, and it
Sorry,
went
all
through.
I could think about is like this Dodge commercial where it's like, you wanna experience the tough ride to feel what a
Yeah,
man is. Like all I can
yeah,
think about is this is not like that stupid advertisement. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, you go.
I got those clothes, and then I see the show, and I see all the promotional images, and everyone in the universe was like, "These all look amazing." And the only thing I could think of is, I'm like, "Is that denim? Joel doesn't wear a denim jacket, does
Oh
he?"
my
And
gosh.
you told me it's like, no, he's probably wearing the blue button up. But then I look closer, I like put my eyeball to the screen, and I'm like, that doesn't look like a blue work shirt. That looks like denim.
Yeah, even Ellie wasn't wearing like her iconic like clothing either. Like the like the Raptors shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
Instead, she wore the Nathan Drake shirt in the first episode. I was so confused. I was like, huh? Why? What?
Hmm?
What? Why do we got this white and red T-shirt? This is Nathan Drake's shirt. This is not Ellie. I feel like they're swapped episodes here, and I loved like seeing the iconic like attire. It just made me smile so much. And when they get into the truck and they start it up, and you just hear like she is like, "I got a tape that's older than I am. I don't know." Oh, you know what? Actually, put it in. This is a good one. And just like listening with them, it's better than nothing. And they travel it on to Pittsburgh, and I just feel like they just hit so many story beats in Lincoln in such a different way. And I was blown away because I'm like, they just they had the exact same parts of the story essentially. All the major character development, story development has been like taken perfectly from the game in just an entirely different form.
Yep.
And I just loved it. So yeah, now my friend, we could get into predictions.
Okay. What are your
So
predictions for the next episode?
oh well, you know what? I it was funny because when I was talking to my girlfriend, she was like, "Man, that episode was so sad." I'm like, "Oh, you wait." And then she's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm just kind of, you know, do you think that episode's going to be topped just by just your opinion, just based on what we know is going to happen in Pittsburgh? Spoiler alert for people who didn't play the game or show. Anyways, like, what do you
So,
think about that? You think it's going to be sadder?
how spoilery are we getting here?
How
Um,
spoiler? Okay, okay.
it will get,
We'll,
it'll get better.
we'll just say there's going to be major
I,
emotional events that are going to take place in the next few episodes.
I will. I think the next episode, the reason they cut out the the Bill gameplay, part of the one of the reasons that just dawned on me
Hmm?
is that that gameplay is very similar to the Pittsburgh gameplay, where you're blowing up zombies and shit, right? You're just it's zombie killing time. And I think that in the next episode, we're gonna get our fill of action. Like we're really gonna start to see like, remember in the QZ when we talked about how bad the outside world was?
Hmm.
And then we got to the outside world, and then we got them walking around for a bit, and then they're talking about how bad it is. And then we get a quiet episode, which is like, oh, here's like, a little removed, quiet, nice like town that isn't affected by the raiders. I think in the next episode we're really gonna get to see. Um, I'm talking about like death-defying stakes of really just the depravity of this world. And I
Hmm.
think that Pittsburgh is going to be as brutal and as interesting as it was in the game. And yeah, I really think that I really think it'll just be incredibly, yeah, just incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I I think that Pittsburgh is going. They're going to go a lot more. See, in this episode, they just kind of mentioned like the QZ massacre, or like they show it, of course, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg at the beginning of like that pandemic of what happened.
Yeah,
And I think Pittsburgh, because we already know there's a couple. The whole point of Pittsburgh is to demonstrate two things to the player. It's meant to show how bad, like you're saying, the outside world is, and how bad the city is. They like the nonsensical killing of people. For like, there's like a line.
it's a cool.
Well, obviously. Well, for example, they kill. Okay, a little bit of a spoiler. It's not that big. For example, they kill like some people. They like kill like innocent civilians, and then they go and they're like, "Oh, these shoes are pretty worn, and they got nothing on them, no food, so that was useless." And they drive away. That's just an example in the game. It's just they kill people to get supplies, which makes sense logically in this universe, but they're so remorseless with it, and they gun them down with giant turrets. And I'm excited. Okay, I should say excited. That sounds a little kind of psychopathic there.
Excited.
I'm excited to see the violent. No, like I'm
And
excited to see how they interpret Pittsburgh, and I want to see the exploration of this universe. To see, I feel like there's going to be like more flashbacks, and they're going to be like a development of how bad it gets. Like they're gonna they're start with a QZ, of course, like in this episode, but in that one it could be like it's slowly getting worse. The wars that occurred and how there's just nobody. And the gameplay is gonna like chop down a lot. It's like or in the game, it's just so much. You go, you kill these soldiers. You go, you kill these soldiers. Go and kill zombies. You kill more soldiers. And it's a lot of just walking and killing. It's kind of boring. Like I just actually play this on my channel, and I thought it was a little bit boring to go through Pittsburgh. And it's not until you meet interesting characters where the story picks up again. So I think that they're going to explore these characters in huge depth, and I'm excited to see that. It's really hard to talk about this episode without spoiling because you don't want to bring names either.
pretty much like it's showing, like I'm gonna say it, like they fight raiders and they deal with what the barbarians of the in between, the no man's land, are in this world. And yeah, no, it really makes sense. I think the next episode is going to be really good. I think I'm honestly looking forward to the action in it. Um, we've seen them fight zombies, and we've seen them in a peaceful episode. Now we're going to see them in a human on human combat, which is really what Pittsburgh kind of explored in the game. So yeah, I'm honestly kind of looking forward to a more action packed episode. Um, and the question of will the show top episode 3 from here? I'm thinking, here's my prediction for this TV show. It's just going to be an endless increase up until episode 10. And episode 10 is going to be incredibly good.
Yeah, I agree.
Nine, maybe it's 9.
No, oh
Whatever.
yeah, you're right. It is 9 episodes.
Um, I think it's going to just get better and better the more it goes on. I think episode 4, I can see if there's going to be a lull, it's probably going to be uh, maybe in the middle a bit. Like there's a bit of a not a lull in the game. Well, yeah, there's a bit of a lull in the game.
Well, I don't know if I agree if there's going to be a lull because they have only 9 episodes. It's really difficult to take that full length game and shorten. Because remember, in the last podcast, we were struggling trying to interpret how the hell they're going to cover everything. And I think they're going to do a great job with the Pittsburgh and future episodes. And I don't know, I'm so like um I'm nervous because each one's just going to get a little bit better, and I hope so. It does. I don't know. I know what's going to happen, and I'm curious of how they're going to switch it up, like they did with this episode. Like this was a curveball episode. I was not prepared for that. I don't know. I was getting into that when I went in. In terms of what I think of the next episode's going to be, I'm curious of how they're going to do like the water element because you know how in the game there's so many pallet parts or ladders. So
Well, they already did it. They had a swimming scene or whatever.
No, there was a joke to it where she's like, I can't swim. And he's like, are you serious? Well, they don't exactly teach you. Stands up in the water. Well, I'm curious because that was a huge thing. Is that like it was a struggle, and like that's also where your exploration came through. I'm curious of that exploring elements and how they're going to demonstrate that in this episode.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I really. The only question this episode is really that I wonder about is how they're going to fit all the content in. Because I know where they have to end at the end of episode 4, and I'm like, gee, you got a lot to cover, guys. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, but I think they can pull it off in a good way, especially if they have an hour of time. I think they can kind of cover that story in an hour. Um, yeah, without too much trouble. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, because there's a huge like season jump. Also, do you think they're going to do those jumps in time? Like, I know they do flashbacks, but in the game, it'd be the summer, fall, winter, and then of course spring, and that those are major dividers in the game.
yes.
And I'm curious, do you think they're actually going to stop it, or do you think they're going to explore their journey and kind of skip over a couple of things? I'm not going to like identify like seasons at all. It's just going to be like shown in the background instead of like a clear divider of time passing.
Mm, I think there's a. I guess it's a tough question actually, because on the one hand, I don't know that they'll put the like name dividers of like fall in the way they do in the game.
No, no, I know that.
I do think they'll do a time jump just because I think it makes more realistic sense. And I really honestly like that. And I was sort of ranting to you the other day about this. I like The Last of Us as like it takes them a long time to cross this. Like it's not a joke
Mm.
to cross the country. And yeah, I think honestly we need the fall, winter, and summer jumps. Like I think those were all pretty much. And wait, we know there's a winter section, so it kind of like we know there's going to have to be a time jump because it's
Oh,
not.
oh yeah, I know. I was just like curious of like your interpretation of that and how they're going to better resemble. Actually, there was an interesting tidbit in the podcast, like of the Last of Us HBO show, and where they originally wanted to film the show, like each episode, it was an interactive moment with the window because in the game that's how you started off. It's just that
Yeah,
window and the breeze, and how they were going to make every single episode with that window. And I'm kind of glad they didn't go with that, but I liked how they gave a little, a tribute nod with the ending. Like you see Joel and Ellie driving off into the distance, and you see Bill and Frank's window,
yeah,
and that's almost like demonstrated like there is some hope. And like, even though like Bill and Frank are past, like their love is like kind of like I don't know. It was almost like France. I don't know how to describe it. Do you know what I'm saying? It was almost like
we're,
like
we're
there you go.
we're getting a little bit into the meme territory. I think of like I've heard jokes about Last of Us fans watching this show where it's like, "That's the backpack Joel had in the game," and then Joel throws a brick, and it's like, "Oh, there were bricks in the game," and then he
No,
goes,
no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I just
then he,
like I like the tributing factor, and I liked how like when you like see them like drive off, it's just kind of, it's like it's a hopeful scene.
yeah, I like the scene. I will say that the window thing, I kind of saw it as like, yeah, okay, yeah, they did the window from the game. They're doing the menu. And I shouldn't be so jaded. I'm glad that they're paying respects to us Last of Us fans, and kind of giving us our due of like, we've been here since the game, and we're really happy to see like, recognition for that. Um, no, so yeah, no, it is good that they're doing that. And I hope they continue to do just little references like that here and there that kind of show no, we have not forgotten you. This isn't just to appeal to a broader audience. It is we give you your little Easter eggs like that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's a good thing of having the game director be an additional director to the show, right? Is that he's very like aware of those different things. I give Neil Druckmann his props. Like he's done a good job like directing like going alongside the who's the Chernobyl director? Do you know?
Craig Mazin.
Craig Mazin? Yeah, he like I haven't seen Chernobyl, but I've seen like a couple scenes and I like
It's
the
like you've made him sound pretty obscure. Where it's like There's this other guy working on the show. His name is like, I think it was like Greg or something. Like it was like it's like, oh, okay, like he is Craig Masson, like one of the most respected television
No,
workers.
I know. Like he is a wonderful director, and I was trying to get props. I just didn't remember his name. I'm sorry, I didn't know his name. Okay, Mister. Who was the other guy with? Who is Frank again? What's it? He's a terrific. Who is he? And he is known for a lot of different performances. Like, and there was actually given props like from the directors itself and like his other content that he released.
Yeah,
Don't be going here saying, "Oh, you just forgot like the major director." Don't you be doing that, man. I see you.
but Frank is an actor playing a character. Craig Mazin is a guy who you listen to on a podcast and are like, who's that other guy on the podcast that who's just
No, I know he's the director who made Chernobyl and plenty of other
yeah.
projects. I know him. I just didn't know his name.
Okay.
Thank you, Kayla, for the clarification.
No problem. I'm always happy to help.
Okay.
But, but yeah,
Um.
yeah, no, I think yeah, that pretty much
Yeah.
summarizes. Yeah, next
Yeah.
episode will be good.
Yeah. I think so too. We summarized like all of our predictions. Well, once again, I want to thank you for coming on to the podcast and giving your insights on the show. Yeah, this is the second episode of the Triangle Button podcast, and I'm very excited for the upcoming ones that we're going to have for the future episodes. And for all of the viewers, like we're not only on Spotify, RSS, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, but we actually just got onto Apple Podcasts as well, and in addition to with YouTube. So if you guys want to like check out the content, it's on multiple platforms. So check it out. And I also have a YouTube channel by the same name, Triangle Button, and where I like play different games such as The Last of Us, Control, and Death Stranding, which is a phenomenal game. And I think we're going to talk about it on the podcast sometime too, because
It is
Caleb
a
loves this
phenomenal
game.
game.
He likes to make fun of this game, but I know he likes it. I do know this.
Yeah, I did watch the Triangle Button YouTube show, or YouTube channel. It is good. This guy can make Death Stranding look like a fun game. Like
It
that's
is a fun game. Actually, there's a cool feature I want to talk about, like, but for another time. But yeah, if you guys want to like see more like content, like either on the channel, or you want to get in touch with me, the best thing is just to comment on like the YouTube channel, And if you want to show your love for the content that me and Caleb are creating, or my content like on the channel, just like, comment, subscribe, and share amongst yourselves. Other than that, I think we're going to conclude the episode here. Let's go.
good night, everybody.
Have a good night.